Hey, it's Matt and Steve. We're here with another episode of the Risk Control Show. Today, we're discussing a very important topic, and it's got really two sides of the coin. There's not a great answer here. It's would you rather have your kids molested in school or shot by a mass shooter? And, this is bringing up a lot of good questions to be asked. We see that when events happen, media latches onto them, and we then put a priority and focus in public schools to put all their efforts into one location, whether that's emergency preparedness, active shooters, or sexual molestation, or this training, or that training, or this training. We got to do it all, folks. There's just no way around it. Matt and I do a lot of active shooter training. We do
Yeah.
audits for sexual molestation for the physical premises. We do septet analysis, all these types of things.
Right.
And Matt will tell you, I think, what do we see when we go out and do these active shooter incidents? We can see in the classroom, we can see the kids, you know,
Yep. Yep. We do. It's sometimes even if they'll have the blinds up, but you can still kind of see past the blinds. If they're not fully closed or anything like that. It's we constantly are able to look in. Now, when we're doing a drill, that's not a big deal from a actual imminent danger perspective, but we're drilling for active shooter. If I'm an active shooter, I can still see the foot of a child lit up by a stray sunlight through that window, and I know that somebody's in there, and maybe I will try to actually ingress that room and shoot somebody in there. Yeah, so obviously with active shooters, we want it to be like a blank slate when an active shooter is there before law enforcement there. We want the active shooter to have no targets, access to no targets, have no ability to reach them, have no ability to know that they are there.
right.
And the way we do that, of course, is with window coverings. Now, whether that's blinds or drapes or the pull down blinds, or maybe we even have polarized glass, that's shaded. However we do it, you can't look inside. But of course, Steve, that you'll say on the other side of that,
Yeah, on
of
the other
course,
side of
is
that, Matt,
yeah,
is a very important issue, and it's sexual molestation. Now, you're probably saying, well, we want to protect the kids from the active shooter because it's devastating. Well, sexual molestation is devastating too. And the reality of the
yes,
sexual molestation is we got a big problem here in California. Number one, um, Governor Newsom, in his infinite wisdom, I'd love to meet this man in person sometime, be able to talk. I've listened to him on some of the shows, but I'd love to talk to him.
right.
And I just wonder if he would actually listen to some of the things. Maybe he could put me in a position, put both of us in a position to clean some of this stuff up around the state of California. It'd be great.
Yeah.
And again, I don't like to pick sides. I'm on your side. I want to see our kids protected. But here's the thing: he signed into legislation the extension uh, of the sexual abuse claims, for
Mm,
students and minors up until the age of 40. That has just sent
that's right.
ripple effect problems through our insurance companies. So much
Yeah.
so, the awards are heinous, um, and, and sometimes you have to ask if that kind of damage. I don't mean to sound cold here, but you know, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of an
It's
award.
the numbers.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the numbers,
that's the numbers.
and unfortunately, um, that has driven the insurance firms to pull out of California. We're
Yeah.
facing some really hard times in California for public schools, and the taxpayers are going to be eating that bill. And that problem is that they don't want to write schools in California anymore because the sexual molestation claims are so crazy.
Yep.
And so you say, well, yeah, the money doesn't matter. It does matter. And it should be telling us that we got a big problem at the lower level that needs to be resolved. I mean, it's not the insurance fault that these cases keep coming forward. We got to
Yeah.
resolve the problem. And so you have to ask yourself, like, what are those numbers? And I found a little, these numbers are really hard to come by, Matt, as you know.
Unusually difficult. You would think
Unusually
these numbers would
difficult.
pop right up.
Yeah, but I'm just going to show this right here. This is the sexual misconduct in schools. Matt's going to talk a little bit about active shooters, but sexual misconduct
Yep.
in schools. When we look at this, it's estimated 1 in 10 students will experience school employee sexual misconduct by the time they graduate. So let's just take an elementary school with 400 kids. That's 40 kids by the time they graduate that will experience some form of sexual misconduct. And that can be direct physical contact, non contact. But the the problem is that it's happening at such a rate, the sexual molestation, that we don't have insurance against it. We don't have great training programs against it. We have mandated reporter. People are supposed to be doing that. We saw with the LAUSD case, there were 18 people that knew that never reported it. When Matt and I do our mandated reporter training, we always talk about, hey, the fact of the matter is that you have to make these reports, even if it's your friend, it's your duty. You know, you got to be wary of the signs and symptoms of these things, and you got to make those reports. But the reality is, when we do the sexual investigations of the misconduct, we always find that there's at least 1 or 2 people that say, yeah, I kind of thought, oh, I kind of knew. Did you make a report? No. Okay, well, we got problems. So we have these problems. It's human emotional problems. And, you know, if you watch our pleasure seeking society today, you'll realize that everything and anything has to do with sex and sexual pleasure. And we see that even with the books that are being um, placed in school libraries, and there's an uproar among parents that these are inappropriate for certain ages, and people, I mean, it's just all about sex and sex and sex and orientation and sex and sex and more sex. So when we look at those numbers, you know, there's some estimates that 290,000 kids each year are sexually abused in a school environment, some form or fashion, whether by a fellow student or an employee. It's a big problem. So let's just take the 10% and let's just ratchet that down to 1%, because I want to show you the difference in the numbers here. So if we were to take, well, Matt, why don't you talk about the numbers for active shooters, and I'm going to put a couple displays together here so we can show this.
Sure thing, sure thing. So with active shooters, I hate this. my my throat starts to go. I need a little water. My
Right?
apologies, phone.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, CNN just this morning actually published an article where they talked about school shooting incidents that have occurred this year, the 2023. Stated that there have been 53 shootings. Now, let me define what they're saying a shooting is. Shooting is someone was shot on school property. Only has to be one person. Those of you who follow active shooter are probably aware that a mass shooting is 4 casualties, not including the gunman. That counts. That is the FBI. When you see the FBI reports on mass shootings, that's the definition that they use and what is generally accepted by most organizations that follow this. So CNN is a little bit broader. It could be one individual getting shot or killed. So there have been 53 shootings according to CNN up to September 19th. So just a few days ago. There have been 27 people have lost their lives and 56 have been injured. So it's frightening to think about those numbers. These are all very serious events that trust me, it's not just that 27 individuals lost their lives or 56 people were injured. There's a massive community impact of an active shooter event. It's a, you can't just say it starts and stops with the victims.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's hard from that perspective. It's hard to encapsulate the impact of an active shooter event. But
Right.
from strictly from the numbers, it's insane to look at these numbers versus the numbers for sexual molestation or sexual misconduct, exposure to sexual misconduct. But obviously, we want to find solutions that stop both sexual molestation, both
Right.
and active shooting, and bringing it back to our original point, the window coverings.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
So for each shooting, what's the average number of students that are killed?
For killed is about 50%. It's 27 over 53, so that's just a touch under 50%. And there's
No, wait a
a
minute.
touch of
No,
0.50. Oh, go ahead.
no. Of one shooting at a school, like how many
Mm.
students are killed? How many were
Students, this
like how many
article,
how many like at Columbine? I'm trying to remember the number of students that were injured or killed.
I want to say that was like 20. I can look that up right now.
Yeah, give me
That
those
was about,
numbers.
yeah. And it was I think it was like 14 kids and 6 staff members or something like that. Let me see here. I forget off the top of my head. 13 people were killed and 20 were wounded.
Okay.
Doesn't state a break. Oh, here we go. 12 students and 1 teacher. So 12 students lost their lives at 12 students lost their lives at Columbine, 1 teacher, and then 20 others were injured.
Okay. And then what was it at Marjorie Douglas?
Yeah. Marjorie Douglas in Florida. Stoneman. That was, I think, a little higher, if I recall correctly. Parkland, yeah. 17, it looks like.
What was their total population?
I think that was a fairly big school, but not ridiculously huge.
All right, well, look that up when I'm going to walk people through this. So again, the total estimated of molestations is going to be 10%, right? 10% is what they estimate. So if we put that in use, like, some people say that's high. Let's just use a number of 1%. So that's what we're going to use here. 1% of the total school population for that school will be sexually molested, right? Because we're going to assume that we got great teachers, our staff.
Yeah.
Okay. If we look at a typical California elementary school, 400 students, that's 4 students of that graduating class, right?
Mm-hmm.
For that year. So grades K through 5, 400 population for year 2020. Boom. You got 4 students that are going to be molested. That's one school site. So some of our school districts might have 9 sites. They got 400 or 500 kids at each site. So just add those together, you're looking at maybe 45 kids for the district at 1%. All right. If we take one of our high schools, one of our client high schools, just one high school has 3,948 student enrollment. And that means that 1% is 39 students, right?
Yeah.
39 students. Okay.
That's just 1%.
That's 1%. It would be 394 at 10%. If we look at Columbine again, as Matt said, again a tragedy. All of these are tragedies, but 13 killed in one event, and again, that's much rarer than a molestation. If we look at Parkland, 17. So we know that if we look again at the high school, we're looking at 39 kids just in that one enrollment on the super low number of sexual molestation. And that being said, like the likelihood of a sexual molestation is much higher than an active shooter. But if an active shooter occurs, it's still very deadly. And so again, but if we look at that, you take Columbine, I don't know what the total student count was at Columbine, but 13.
Looks like it's a shade under 2,000.
Okay, so that would be 20 kids molested potentially versus the 13 killed. Not that I can make a comparison as to the travesty and devastation that's done to the families and those involved, but the point of it is, when you start to look at molestations and active shooters, how do you choose what is the best option for your school site and the policies that you put in place about window coverings, for example?
Right.
And we find this push and this pull and this push and this pull. When we do active shooter training, Matt, the one thing we always say is, this is unlike any other emergency that you'll ever face. Why? Because it flies in the face of everything that you're supposed to do, right?
Yes.
You don't want to ever lock the doors in a fire or an earthquake because you want to be able to escape the room if you need to.
Yes.
What do we do with an active shooter? We lock ourselves in.
We lock ourselves in and we hide and we make ourselves invisible and we don't make sound and we stay still.
Right. We
we
lock that door, and now we've locked ourselves in against the potential escape for a fire, especially if the teacher passes or something like that, and we have very small children. They may not know how to operate that door very well. So that being said, hey, it's contrary to all the other rules and regulations. Active shooter, what do? We try to put up barriers so that people can't see in, so that the shooter can't see in. Well, what does the fire code say, especially here in California? It says 10% of your doors or your wall space, including windows, 20% in hallways can be covered with flame retardant papers and arts and those types of things, wall coverings, and they have to be flame retardant. And then we know we don't ever put up flame retardant paper because it's too damn expensive to buy. So the kids make art, and it's displayed, and we have posters and all kinds of stuff, and none of it's in compliance with it. It's the same thing with the furniture. It's all supposed to be a technical bulletin 133 rated. It's not. People drag stuff from home, blah, blah, blah. So on and so forth and so forth. But active shooter flies in the face of all the other good programs that we have. And we have to understand that there's a time and a place for it. We have rules that say that any wall coverings under Title 19, education code, and all this kind of stuff cannot exceed 10% of the total space of the classroom walls, including doors and windows. And so therefore, you have to really monitor it. I haven't seen a class. I mean, I've seen a couple classrooms, but they're rare that are in compliance with that. But that being said, once we put up wall coverings or window coverings, then we're doing good for the active shooter, but now we are also doing bad for the molestation, because now we're providing a hiding spot for molestation. Same thing came about in California after a lot of the active I think it was actually after Columbine. My timeline's getting a little fuzzy here, but that says that all doors must have an interior lock, be lockable from the inside, because what was happening when we do these drills is the teacher would have to go outside, put their key in, and lock the door. And so they're being exposed to potential shooters, or their arms
Right.
are going outside, or the door is not getting locked. So everything's lockable from the inside. Well, that's great for an active shooter. It's bad for a fire, and it's bad for sexual
Yep.
molestation now, because guess what? You can't just open the door and see what's going on. What happens when you put a key in the door? Noise is made, blah, blah, blah. And you give people the opportunity to stop the molestation before being seen or caught. As a person that does audits, I'm here to tell you that I personally walked in and have had people arrested, having sexual relations with students in the gym locker rooms and stuff like that, when I'm doing audits, because they don't expect me to be there and they don't realize that I'm going to be walking through. Now,
Right.
again, if that door is locked, if I can't see in through the window, then I don't know. I give them a warning. So
Right.
we go back to, well, which do you want to do? Well, there's no good answer to this, is really the
Yeah.
answer. Um, you have to look at your schools, and you have to look at uh, what is the design features of the school is, and what kind of access you have to those.
Yeah.
So what are the policies as well? I thought you were going to say something else there,
Yeah.
man. The
No.
policies, the policies and the enforcement of those policies is really what it comes down to. Number one, you got mandated report. You got to enforce that. You got to make sure you're doing training on it. It, you know, I, I get everybody wants to do online training. Online training is great. There's some real drawbacks to it too. And those
Right.
drawbacks are, I can't see the engagement of the individual. I can't read their face. I don't know if they're getting it or understanding it. And I can't
Yeah.
really truly reinforce my points with inflection of voice and all these types of things, because everybody wants a very professional and, PC related, don't offend anybody, trigger warning this. We're
Right.
talking about sexual molestation. I remember I did a course. I taught a course on sexual on the mandated reporting, and I showed some images. I told people ahead of time, "Hey, I get it. There's trigger
Yeah.
warning. None of them are that bad. They're the ones provided by the state." Oh my God, up in arms and blah. What do you think we're talking about here? I'm sorry,
Right.
but this is what it looks like. So this is what you got to look for, and these types of things. And this was just the physical abuse. It wasn't sexual abuse.
Right.
So it
Right.
wasn't that bad, but it was bad because it's emotional, because it's children. So when you
Yes.
look at this, you have to really understand there's not a great option here, to do the windows. But next thing is we got to do we have to have policies. What are
Mm.
some of those policies, man? Like, if you have to have a one-on-one with the student, what should you do? Do that in your classroom?
I mean, where else are you going to do it if you have, you got to go to an office, you have to
Exactly.
be in public, I
The
mean, yeah,
library,
yeah,
right? The conference room. If
yep,
you are going to do it in your classroom and your district allows that, then by all means, you alert someone ahead of time. You let them know. You keep your door wide open and unlocked, so that
yep,
everyone can see. You do that in a part of the classroom that is viewable. And that means if I look through the front door, I can see in there. So that's part of it.
yeah,
You got to have those policies. One-on-one
yeah,
student interaction should be done in a public space, not just the classroom. And I know when we start talking about schools, everything is public, yes, but in a public space, meaning accessible to anybody to walk through at any time. The other thing
right,
is, people have to have access to those classroom doors, right? And they have to have their keys, and they have to be open. And so, again, yes, they need to be lockable based on law, but that doesn't mean that they need to be locked at all times throughout the
right,
day. And so we see a lot of those door spacers. And back when we started looking at those, Matt, um, we realized that, yeah, come down to the beach. We got a nice cool breeze.
mm,
Go to a little bit inland, like Torrance. Then, yeah, you still got a cool breeze. You don't have a lot of dust and debris. Go out to Fontana or Redlands or Palm Desert, and you got 30-mile-per-hour winds whipping around, throwing sand and dust and dirt in the air. Then we got noise, we got dust and dirt and sand coming into the classroom. It's a real disturbance. So those things
Yeah.
don't work well in those areas. And we found that it was a distraction. And everybody says, well, why don't you use those? Well, that's exactly why. Because number one, it's hot and we got to pay air conditioning bills. Number two, we're getting all kinds of crap in there. So a lot of people will leave their door closed in those areas, in those districts, and that's
Right.
fine, but it should be unlocked, right? And
Yes.
so that's the other. Um, we have to come up with a solution for the windows, because again, the windows become. I know some of them have put on mirrored tint, UV tint, to block the sun rays, but
Right.
you and I both know that when you're doing active shooter drills and you're trying to look through those windows, it's so difficult to see into those classrooms that
It
that's
is.
not really the best solution either. So, what do we do there? And the reality is, um, you're not going to be in all places on the campus at all times. You have to really start doing training. You have to have your policies in place. You have to enforce those policies. So if you do come to a classroom and you can't get in, why is that? And what is the further investigation should go on? And that might be short, it might be long, but it needs to go on. The other thing is, um, we need to be doing audits. So
Yeah.
I know we were asked to, show how to conduct a sexual molestation audit, our sexual harassment audit, abuse audit in schools, and we did that. We went through and we showed everybody, uh, the auditors, how to look for signs and symptoms of sexual abuse and molestation. And we saw that with, you know, furniture in the back rooms, pills in the back rooms, notes to teachers, inappropriate photos, all kinds of stuff. I could just go on and on about the things. But if you're not
Right.
doing those audits, you're doing yourself a disservice. And, we conducted, Matt and I, and Joan and Susan and everybody conducts those audits. They're relatively easy to do, but you got to be doing it and you can't be too close to it. So,
Yeah.
otherwise we get back into that whole thing. What is one of the reasons that people don't report this stuff? And that is because they're friends with them. They've known them for 20 years.
Right. No, they'd never do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
they wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they
Yeah.
say. That's what that when someone doesn't report, that's what they say. Oh, they're certain this person is certain that the alleged molester would never do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't we
So they
have
said,
like
oh,
a whole list of pictures of people that would never do that?
yeah, probably.
Like Michael Jackson, what was the other guy's name?
R.
R.
Kelly.
Kelly,
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey, Roman Polanski,
Yep.
uh, um, yeah, on and on and on. And the latest and greatest is Russell Brand has been accused
Yeah,
of this.
that's right.
He's been accused.
Yes.
He's been accused.
Yeah.
He's been
Yeah.
accused.
Alleged.
Alleged. I
Yeah.
don't know, but here again, you don't know. You don't know. And so, having worked in jails and working on the drug use forecasting project and everything, you can't guess. You look at people and go, "No way, that guy's not a drug
Yeah.
user."
You never get right.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
if you're a risk manager, especially of a school district, you have a real hard line to tout here, and that is, do we put up window coverings? Do we allow it? Do we not allow it? What's the benefit? I can tell you from the numbers that sexual molestation is a far greater risk. It's a greater risk to insure against, and it's going to become a serious reputation and financial risk for districts. On the flip side of that, the active shooters are less of an occurrence risk, meaning that the probability that one happens at your school is much less than a sexual molestation. However, the
Yeah.
devastation, the immediate notification of devastation to the
Right.
community itself and to the individuals there is enormous. So if it
Yes.
happens, it's enormous. Sexual molestation, abuse, if it happens, it's a long term societal and personal devastation that occurs that wreaks havoc in unknown ways. Uh, and that is almost guaranteed to happen. It's been a problem for as long as society has been alive. And
Yeah.
as a criminologist studying this stuff for many moons, it's always been there, always has been. We've seen it in the church. Back when the church was settling a lot of their claims, they would say the problem's 10 times
Yeah.
greater in public schools. It's true. We're seeing the ramifications of that now with the insurance companies pulling out, but you
Yeah.
have to weigh the options and circumstances. So if you're going to pull out window coverings, then you also
Mhm.
have to give some methodologies to protect themselves in the event of an active shooter. And so, how do we
Right.
do that? We have screens. You should have some blinds that come down. I know that there's new automated blinds. The ADA's made a push, especially in healthcare, to put in automated blinds. I know some of our schools are putting in some new technology with the modernizations that will put in automated blinds. They'll be tied to the alarm system. So when the alarm happens, the blinds come down, which is a great feature. It's a great feature. It's something that's really cool. Um, I'm not sure where all this energy is going to come from in the sense of we're trying to be environmentally friendly and everything we're connecting up to power, and it just doesn't, there's a lot there. So again, you have to
Right.
have the options. I know some of our sites are kind of putting the movable Sochi screens in there, kind of like what you'd have in the dressing rooms, things like that. And those are great too because you can't see through them, so you just don't know. I will tell you
Yeah.
this, and I hate to say this out loud, and maybe let me think about this. Should I or should I not? I think it's okay to say this because I think it's obvious.
Okay.
Um, and that is when it comes to active shooter. In California, we got a real problem. In the 70s, the drugs were running rampant. And so what did they say? They said, you know what? Kids are hiding drugs in their lockers, hiding weapons in their lockers. So what are we going to do? We're not going to have lockers. So a
Right.
lot of our schools don't have lockers, and the kids carry around these giant backpacks. And because they're so big and the classrooms are so small, what do, Matt? Where do you see the backpacks?
They're left outside,
Yeah,
or they're piled on the ground in a corner, and where it's
yeah,
yeah, no,
they're hanging on hooks outside the classroom.
right,
And
right,
so what that does is that created a whole issue with the kids breaking off the hooks, running their eyeballs into the hooks, getting caught on the hooks, all kinds of crap. So, but what does, if I got 20 backpacks hanging on hooks outside the classroom in front of the window, what does that tell me?
yeah, exactly. There are 20 students minimum inside
So you think I came
that I
on
can, yeah,
campus, I
20
shot through the,
targets,
the front door, I ran, you heard the alarm go off, and magically 400 kids disappeared down the street? No, they're hiding in the
yeah,
classroom. And so
yeah,
the backpacks on the front of the classroom just tell me exactly where the kids are, right?
right,
So if you have window coverings or not, I kind of already know where the locations are.
right,
So the window coverings, they definitely impede upon the detection of sexual molestation and inappropriate sexual activities in schools. However, the window coverings don't always impede in the detection of where students are in active shooting.
right,
So, are
right,
they important and are they helpful? Yes, because I don't know exactly where in the classroom you could be located, but
right.
easily break the glass, shoot through the door, whatever it may be, and not potentially into that classroom. So it's a conundrum. What did Governor Newsom say the other day when he was describing? Oh gosh, wasn't a conundrum, but it was a good one. I wanted to use that term. Uh, so anyway, it's a conundrum. It's a real problem. There's
an enigma.
There's just not a great solution, and
there isn't.
In one you get these benefits, the other you get these benefits. It's a cost benefit analysis, but I would say, if you're in an area where you feel like that active shooter threat is there, or you have had students that are threats, then of course you have to address that, and then maybe that takes the priority. But on a day-to-day general basis, that sexual molestation risk is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's much higher.
It's much higher.
Yeah.
And
it's much more prevalent.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, give us a call. We'd be happy to do some of your molestation audits and things like that. Don't forget to check out all of our cool sites. We got the website, the blog, the podcast, the YouTube. We got the Dollar Training Club, which is awesome. Udemy. If you are following us, you can follow us on all the major social media, including the X. And don't forget to subscribe right here so you can get all our great content all the time as it happens.
Yep, exactly.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you guys.